Hello, and welcome to StoryFellas, the podcast where we make stories and we break stories. I'm your host, Tommy Antonucci.
And I'm your host, Zach Lovelace.
And if you're watching this on YouTube and you're like, why does Tommy look like potato quality cam?
Oh,
It's because I'm not using my nice camera. I was filming
oof.
a wedding project and all my cameras are packed away right now. So I do not have my classic setup. So I'm going old school with it.
Going ugly.
Don't make me go full ugly.
Yeah, going full ugly, fellas. Here I go. Yeah, watching
That's a
it right
funny
now.
catchphrase. It's like because it's like, what does that mean?
I have no idea. But it is
I
what you're.
don't.
If you want to know what it means, go to YouTube and watch this episode, folks, because you can see Tommy.
Yeah,
He went full
go check it
ugly
out.
here. He went
What
full ugly.
full ugly on this episode? Just like making faces the whole time. It's like,
Dude,
I don't know
calling
your
someone
webcam makes you
ugly
make
is
those faces.
so funny. Calling someone ugly.
And
You are.
mean. You
You.
can't call people ugly.
Well, what if they really are? But yeah, you just like, I mean, obviously within story world, I'm not actually
Yeah,
doing it. My
like a
characters are doing it.
character.
Yeah.
Like
Somebody coming up to you. I mean, the little kid is the classic example of just, you're ugly.
it just makes me think of SpongeBob when he thinks he's ugly, but he has the
Hmm.
bad breath.
Yes,
It's
yes,
like,
that's true. Classic
hope you're not
reference.
bothered by my severe ugliness.
Yeah. Not at
Not
all,
at
my
all,
boy.
boy. Yeah.
Yeah,
You either
SpongeBob
know that
is,
reference or you don't.
yeah. I mean, I think most people probably in our audience are probably big sponge heads, you know?
Big sponge heads. You
Yeah,
go
big sponge
they
heads.
watch SpongeBob into the night and they to fall asleep, they turn on StoryFellas, get a good story in. They're like, yeah.
One day we'll do our SpongeBob episode where we'll do it. We'll do an episode about an episode of SpongeBob.
Yeah, like we make our own episode of SpongeBob.
That would be really cool, actually.
Are they still making it? Is it still new?
Yeah, yeah. And
Really?
I think it's trying to find its identity, or maybe they did. You know, there was the Steven Hillenburg era, which goes all the way to the first film, and I think that's when people kind of generally agree that it goes downhill after that. That was kind of the
Hmm.
send off of the show. But after that, the style changes. He gets really clean.
Mm-hmm.
Like the line art and stuff gets cleaner, and now it's more about weirdo, like um kind of almost Ren and Stimpy esque moments and stuff like that. I don't know. I mean, not that it didn't have that before, it definitely did, but just the
Yeah, I like
SpongeBob close ups of things.
yeah,
I don't know.
the
It's
SpongeBob close-ups, the his hands, I hope they're not
yeah.
dirty. There's just like hands come into frame. I love
They're
it.
like stinky.
All of our friends do that bit whenever we're on a call where because it's just like hands coming into frame
Yeah.
that aren't. But
It's
I
so
like
good. It's so good.
I like some of that era, that like middle era. Like
That's
now, like
true.
I see gifs of SpongeBob and I can just tell it's not my era because it's like hyper
Yes.
clean,
Yes.
hyper
Again,
like
I don't know how to like
polished.
really describe it. Yeah, it's like polished. They have other characters in it that aren't the like main kind of cast for one, but then also the secondary supporting cast. They bring in like specialty characters, and those are often the weirdest ones. Like they make them look weird and stuff, and I
Mm.
don't know. And like they do weird faces that aren't
Mhm.
SpongeBob close-ups or anything. Like SpongeBob makes, and again, I'm saying things that he already did like in the regular era, but I think it's just been amped up, like
Yeah, I did.
stylistically.
Have I know we're talking a lot about SpongeBob. Have I given you my little rant about like how they kind of perfectly positioned that show to like make types of things happen?
No.
Because I do think like especially early SpongeBob just setting this up because like a lot of shows you have to live in the world like Rick and Morty is going to be like okay it's sci-fi adventures like that's what's
Yeah.
happening and you comedies especially can push it a little bit but SpongeBob being like basically he's a man child.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, they've set it up so many things because his boating school is, like, anything school related, anything in that, like, young, like, school stuff. His job at the Krusty Krab is, like, working environment thing. It's, like, there's all these, like, weird, distinct parts of his life that, like, fit multiple like, "Oh, if you're in school, you can relate to this. If you're in a workforce, you can relate to this. If you have
Yes.
neighbors, you can relate to this." Like, it was just I don't know, I feel like it was intentional, it was very smart because it gave them a lot of avenues to make different types of
Yeah,
stories.
totally, totally. It's multiple workplace comedies. There's even just
Mhm.
kind of the neighbors.
Mhm.
Like the house is the main place where they goof off and do weird things. They make Squidward mad or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that show. It's formative for sure. Doing an animated kids show would be amazing of that ilk. Because
Mhm.
that obviously describes a huge swath of shows, but something that's comedic and I mean, but he's also just gone like mega platinum popular, which
Yeah.
not that that's not cool. I mean, that's what you'd hope for a show like that, but um I don't know. Again,
I
I
think
think it loses a little bit of its soul now that it's gone into, super clean art, but also goofy characters. It's just not the same. It's not the same, my guy.
yeah. Well, I think any story will jump the shark if you don't end it. I was talking to my wife about this, and we're kind of firm believers that a trilogy is like the perfect amount of time, like three
Oh yeah.
distinct big chunks. And because of money and because of business, like lots of things get stretched further than that, and then the story tends to die, and that's just the
I think that's why
mm,
we might be in the golden era of television, but television sucks more now. Like television, we're talking streaming because stuff just
mhm,
is around for 2 seasons. Maybe then if it's popular, like Stranger Things, it's around for like 5 seasons or whatever.
mhm,
Um, Originally, TV had like low stakes, low urgency, like low continuity in terms of like, okay, you could pop on an episode of whatever, and it's like you're kind of just jumping into to their world, and it's just funny for that time, and then you jump on to the next thing. There's nothing that carries over.
mhm,
Um, Now it's everything's got to be hyper connected, and it's like competing with. I don't. I have this thing where it's like, did TV eat movies or did
mm,
movies eat TV? Um, and it's really hard to tell because like MCU is hyper televised or televisionized cinema,
mhm,
and then what is it like streaming services? They go super dark and things that you can never do. They have way better acting, things that you could never have seen on television before. So it's just interesting that everything is becoming everything. And then so then it becomes nothing. It lost the reason. We don't have the limitation anymore. We don't have the censors on TV because we're streaming
mm,
now, so we can do edgier things. And
mhm.
so it just loses more of its identity as
That
it
is
goes on.
interesting. The idea that it's all one thing, like all
Hmm.
movies, it's all just like
It's
it's
content.
all big, yeah, big long form content.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it is all same. Cause yeah,
It
it's
is.
we have a Samsung TV, and I guess when we got it, it just came with like some channels, and
Mm.
so like it will just and like it just kind of feels nostalgic because you'll just kind of flip through. It's like a channel is like
Oh
one
yeah.
show, like it'll just be like Top Gear forever. It'll just be
Yes. Oh, those are called
SNL
fast
forever.
channels. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Um.
Yeah, those are interesting, and that's actually where I think TV has it like found a way to
Mm,
survive.
mhm.
And you have commercials, obviously, like you said, but
Yeah.
it's all John Wayne movies or you know royalty free slasher films from like the 60s and 70s. Um,
Yeah. It's
yeah.
hey, commercials like in TV, it's like there's something nostalgic about that where you just
Hmm.
I don't know, you have these forced breaks. You're like, "Oh, I'm gonna go get popcorn in a bit." Like, I'm not gonna, like, interrupt the flow. Like, there will be a natural pause that
Oh
I'm
yeah,
gonna
I
run.
can get up, and it's been to, the 5 act structure. There's cliffhangers at each thing. Yeah, we're
Mhm,
beyond that. We're beyond even people sitting down at the same time and watching things. Sports are maybe the closest thing you get to nowadays, where I sit
mhm,
down and I watch the Super Bowl alongside of millions of other people.
mhm,
Even then, like the Super Bowl watch rate is like super low compared to what it's been in the past. So it's just we aren't even congregating in the same spaces anymore media wise.
mhm.
And that's why I'm a big proponent of film, that there is something to be said about going and sitting in a room, even if I don't talk to any of the other people, but experiencing
Yeah.
it in the same way, in the same time. And then that Monday, you go see it on the weekend. That Monday, you go and talk to the other people at work about that movie.
Yeah.
And that's lost now. Now it could be a Thursday and you show up and you're just like, yeah, so I just watched Alien Romulus. And throwing off the feng shui of like cinema word of mouth, Anyway, I
Mhm,
mean, it happens sometimes because like Stranger Things, I remember a couple years ago when the most recent season came out, or whether that was a couple years ago, I don't know, my timeline's all jacked up, but uh that everyone at work was talking about that for a week or so. um
mhm.
but yeah, nowadays it's like hyper trends on TikTok and stuff like that. At least that's what I hear at work.
Yeah.
Just people talking about, oh, demure this, demure that. No, it's just not my scene. That's all. It's not my scene. To each his own.
Well, on that note.
Yeah. You're right, man. You're right.
Let's tell our own story. In this world of stories and too much content, let's add more to it. Let's tell
Hey, you
another
kids like
story.
content? Hey,
Here's some
guess
content.
what? We got some content. No, we're part of the live arts. We're more akin to theater. You know, you're watching two guys put their souls out there, like two just naked bodies, you know, just sitting there, and you get to watch.
Yeah,
Actually,
that's for the Patreon feed.
yeah. There's a paywall that you got to look. We give you a little keyhole look into the paywall. Oh,
I hope this isn't someone's first episode.
hubba. Yeah, if this is your first episode, well, welcome. We make up a story in an hour. We're called the StoryFellas, and it's mostly improv. We improv dialogue. At the end of it, we title the film, and we do something called the Along the Lines, where we come up with a line from the conversation that we just had. And so a lot of it is just back and forth, like, oh yeah, this, oh yeah, that, and it gets wild and crazy sometimes, especially when Tommy is sober and Zach has got an old fashioned in his hand, which is typically how it goes. So. Welcome.
Yeah, maybe that's the secret sauce. Maybe
I think
that's
it
the
is.
secret sauce.
I think it's the
But
secret
Zach,
formula.
I need you to roll a D12 dice for me. A D12.
A D12. Let's see. Dice roll. Pull it up here. Come on. Here we go. I'm at the casino. I got my diaper on. Let's see. What did I roll? I rolled a 7.
What? A 7. Awesome.
Yeah.
Let me see. A 7. Oh man, I was kind of hoping you would roll this one. The prompt, we'll do a prompt and then we'll do a random requirement. I
Okay.
feel like we've made jokes about this as well. The prompt is a video call couldn't possibly go worse.
Ooh,
So we're going to start with that. Clearly,
right.
I feel like that's not the
Possibly
whole
go
film.
worse. Okay.
Couldn't possibly go worse. And we can
Yeah,
interpret
that's
that
fine.
however
That's
we
fine.
want. But some reason video call really impacts this person's life. I need you to roll a D10 for me.
A D10. All right, give me just a second. Let's see. I'm going to roll it on my phone for internet's sake here. I am trying to stop any weird chokage on Tommy right now on the internet. So you said a D10?
Yeah, D10.
Roll. All right, here we go. Daddy's going to roll a 10.
A 10. Perfect. 10.
Thumbnail.
10.
Here's your
All
thumbnail
right,
image.
well,
You can literally see my reflection in the thing. Anyway.
Let's see. So the 10 is you're gonna love this one. Jimmy Stewart voices a character in this.
Oh, nice. Wow. I just rolled a 10. All right. So Jimmy Stewart plays a character. So he's not necessarily that's interesting because we have like Zoom calls and Jimmy Stewart. So we're really going alt universe here.
Yeah, or I could hear his voice. Like it could just be a Jimmy Stewart-esque voice if we wanted to do that. Or
that's fair. You just want me to do my Jimmy Stewart impression, is what you're saying.
Yeah, that's what the audience wants and needs. So
yeah, sure.
That's what I'm saying.
They do need it. They do need it.
Jimmy Stewart somewhere in there, but let's tell this story about a video call that goes terribly that impacts this person's life in a big way.
All right. So do we think Jimmy Stewart is the main character, or do we think he's a supporting character? Probably best to be supporting.
I think he's a supporting character.
Yeah, just unless you want to hit that drum hard today. Well, I hear the Cherokee drums. They're coming to scalp us. I'm currently on Zoom, and I'm being scalped. Couldn't possibly go worse for old Jimmy Stewart. Well, I appear he sounds like a news reporter too. He's like, well, I appear to be being scalped during my Zoom call. Ow.
Oh man,
Will you lay off? Will you lay off?
that's the funny thing about a Jimmy Stewart impression is he's never actually sounds that distraught. Like he always sounds
Yeah.
just kind of like high
Well, he's
octane,
just
like
polite. He's a
no
polite
matter
guy.
what,
He's a polite
he's
guy,
just
so
very
he's just gonna
polite.
be. But he gets well, I get frustrated, and just stuttery, and then he like spits it out, and he's I can say so much right now. He's currently
Well,
being scalped.
let's keep that in the bottle until we figure out what
All
we're
right,
gonna
you're
do
right. You're
here.
right. You're right.
Because
I
I
kind
feel
of
like
like
my
digging,
mind. Let's
pushing into him being scalped on screen. I think that's funny.
okay.
Ow! 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 It's just like getting grabbed.
Okay,
Oh!
I'm gonna throw some things out. I'm gonna throw some things out, and you tell me which direction you
All right, throw
want to go
them
with
out.
this, because I feel like my mind immediately goes to some sort of job interview that either goes
Mm-hmm.
really right or really wrong somehow.
Okay.
Like right in like a bad way for like they get the job but they're not prepared for it or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
It could be we could go the direction of like there's something supernatural with these video calls where something crazy happens when they get in the video. Like
I like
video
that.
call
Yeah.
couldn't go worse. It's like, oh, they get sucked into the thing, or they like
Yeah.
accidentally somehow kill somebody through the video call accidentally. Like they
Yeah, I
kill the
think
person they
I
were
mean
interviewing
the
with.
the most realistic like base level thing would be that you're on a video call driving and he's like he kills somebody while doing that. I think that's pretty awful. I say he. It could be anybody. Um
Yeah.
but then Jimmy Stewart is also in it.
Jimmy Stewart's his roommate.
Jimmy Stewart's the main character's roommate. Okay.
Yeah, or
Interesting. Jimmy
something.
Stewart feels
Or his
old to
dad.
me. So he just like he feels like he's
No,
probably
it's like
at least
it's
40.
just it's a younger Jimmy Stewart. We
Okay.
like
I'm
we
okay with
reverse
that,
age him.
Yeah, oh of
We
course. It's what you call it? Mr. Smith Goes to Washington level where he's like late 20s. Well, I'm
yeah.
gonna go to
I
Washington.
it's, something like an accidental crime and young Jimmy Stewart's like no one could find out about this.
Yeah, yeah.
Just like these
We
like
gotta
trying to
hide the
encourage him.
body. We gotta hide the body. Well, Mary,
That
what do you want? You want me to hide the body? you know, I just keep you like my impression always goes back to "It's a Wonderful Life" quotes. So,
Mhm.
Potter, he's so exasperated. Uh, yeah.
But
Okay. I
so
like him
yeah,
being
so we
somebody's
could
dad
go
too. Like that's a classic. It kind of
yeah.
situates him in a
Yeah, I
nice
think it,
place too. But we should think more plot before we can drop him in. I think.
yeah, yeah. I think I probably should have saved the Jimmy Stewart thing because you were you're
I was
just
going
too good
hard.
at it, man.
I was going hard on
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
let's put Jimmy in the box. Let's put Jimmy in the box.
Jimmy's in the box.
He's in the shelf.
Jimmy,
He's in the
Jimmy,
shelf.
eat world, all you want in the box. Okay, you hear that?
Let's focus
Jimmy?
on our protagonist. I like a female protagonist. I think that's kind of cool,
Mhm.
especially if it's like some sort of comedy, like crime comedy. Do you
Yeah.
want to
Okay.
go supernatural with it, or do you want to go more like
I say
grounded?
let's go more farcical. Let's just try and keep it really real. I mean,
Okay.
exaggerated to real. Cohen brothers.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
we're going Cohen brothers on this.
Hmm.
I don't think the Zoom call should be that important, or like it's not. I mean, maybe it could be the inciting incident. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And I guess that's
Yeah.
about as important as it can be. Or
Yeah.
maybe,
I
yeah, get it out of the way early is my point. Like I want it to just, okay, we move on from that.
yeah. I kind of feel like it's like a very light domino, like butterfly effect-esque thing where
Hmm.
it's kind of harmless on itself, but it kind of starts a chain reaction that creates a bigger problem for our
Yeah,
protagonist.
agreed.
So let's have our protagonist is a girl, and her name is going to be
Her name is going to be Rose.
oh, okay. I like Rose. Um, Rose. And is she a businesswoman, like a working lady? I feel like Zoom call like kind of screams some sort, or she could be doing like a video call with a family member. It
That's
would be
true.
funny if
It's
like
not
somehow
business.
she
Yeah.
accidentally, or what if the video call is like something bad happens or some crime's committed and there's like an accidental butt dial and it like video
Mm.
calls someone and they're caught or something.
That's a good idea, but it sent me on
Okay.
one path, which is that um she's video calling somebody on their honeymoon, or maybe her parents on their like 50th honeymoon or whatever. I mean, they'd be
Okay.
pretty old, I guess. But and maybe that's where Jimmy Stewart comes in, and then they get
Mhm.
kidnapped by the cartel on the call. And so that's like the
Wait.
worst that could possibly happen, like in Cancun or whatever. And they're like, oh, they get captured, and whoa,
Okay.
whoa,
Oh.
whoa, whoa, whoa.
I like that actually.
Rose, these fellas mean business. That wasn't that great about Jimmy, but you get my point.
No, I like that. Yeah, it's Jimmy Stewart and let's call him James. You want to call the
Okay.
dad James?
I'm okay. I'm okay with that. Yeah.
James, just because we're
My
talking
name's
Jimmy anyway.
James. James.
Um,
James Stewart.
some people, it's James Stewart. And then we need a name for the mom. She can be Rachel.
Rachel's fine. Yeah.
Rachel.
Rachel.
Uh,
Rachel. That's what I always think of as Dark Knight.
Yeah, can you give me a Batman but played by Jimmy Stewart?
Oh boy. Okay.
Really just making you dance monkey dance.
Well, I know, right? Rachel. It's not that good. It's not that good. Rachel. I'm trying to think about quotes from The Dark Knight at this point. Well, what does the Joker say? now that we're in it,
You'd wonder why a man would shoot a man before throwing him out on
that's
a plane.
Bane. That's
Yeah,
Bane.
I know. I'm doing my
because I can, there's like the everything burns. There's that kind of thing. Well, everything burns.
Oh yeah.
It's just like watching it burn.
Just like matter of fact, like I'm like a dog chasing a car. I wouldn't know what to do if I caught it.
I'm like a dog chasing a car. I wouldn't know what to do if I caught one.
You made him like a little bit Brooklyn, like a little bit. I like that.
I'm chasing a car.
I'm chasing a car here. Okay. So we've got Rose, and she is,
and her mom Rachel. You're really on the R's tonight.
Yep, Rachel and Rick the dad.
Yeah.
No, James the dad.
James the dad is fine. That'll help us.
I'm really on R's. You came up with the Rose. You're one half of that.
But I started the R. You're the one who's continuing.
People have names that start with the same letters, Zach.
Don't you know? Families they're like the alphabet. That's the A family. That's the B family.
Yeah.
We're
like
on the R
Addams
family. Yeah, we're on the I guess
R
the
family. Rated
Riggs.
Rated R.
Rose Riggs. Rachel Riggs.
Rachel Riggs. James Riggs.
And then James Yeah. Anyway,
okay.
So I think we're in comedy territory, Coen brother territory. So her parents get kidnapped while on their honeymoon, celebrating their 30th anniversary or something. And so she would have to. I think the story lends itself to find her. Alienated brother, right? Like somebody who was also part of the family that could help get them back. And so then she goes on a road trip style thing. And she digs up this brother. It's like, mom and dad got kidnapped. And he's like, well, I don't care about them. That would be the plot, I think. That maximizes family ties plus conflict, and then pushes us into comedic style territory.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that? What do you think about that?
I think I'm good with that. Either having this brother who's like kind of distant and stuff. I feel like we do a lot of like families that are distant, like that are kind of estranged. I feel like another avenue we could go is like some guy that I don't know if she's an ex-boyfriend or something who's like kind of like wannabe military or something.
Okay.
That like because I picture like if the guy is like has the skills and is super, he's like, oh, we're gonna get your parents back, but she is not thrilled to be working with him. I think that's also very funny.
That is, that definitely lends itself to romantic comedy, which is cool. Very familiar territory for us. That definitely adds another dimension to it. Like a brother, she's not going to be romantic with, obviously. And so we have them go save the parents. I think the twist ends up being that they faked it. That the parents faked it.
The parents did?
Yeah, because they're like, this plays on a little bit of tropes that we've done in the past, but it's like, well, Rose, we knew you wouldn't marry a man unless you went on an adventure with him.
Oh, I thought you were just gonna say like that James Stewart is actually the big bad at the end. Like he's actually the
Well,
like drug leader.
technically yes, but they have been kidnapped. They faked their own kidnapping, basically,
Hmm.
to like
I
help
I
Rose resolve her issues.
I think them getting real kidnapped is like funnier just because the dad is Jimmy Stewart. Because I
That's
feel like we
true.
have
The stakes are
these
real
two
at that point.
plots. Well, like yeah, like him just talking to like real criminals that are
Yeah.
holding him at gunpoint, and he's like, "Well, well, hold on there."
Well, boys,
Um,
I don't speak a lick of Spanish. And so he's just out there. He's just out there, man. He is out there.
it's just, and I just feel like there is like this funny, like if they still have the call, like she's like, the call's still going. He keeps on butt dialing me, and then like her ex boyfriend is like, hold on, let me listen, and then he's like listening. He's trying to like hear things in the background. He's just. And just like he's like, he's just like, oh,
Oh,
you must
sorry,
be really
Rose.
scared.
Yeah, exactly. Your mom sounds really scared. Um,
Oh, but I don't know. Like I'm kind of pulling from. I can't remember that Sandra Bullock Channing Tatum movie. Do you know what I'm talking about?
oh, I know what you're talking
Uh,
about. Yeah, yeah.
uh,
I can't remember the name of it either, but I know what you're talking about.
it's like Paradise Island. Lost City, The Lost City.
Yes.
For those who've not seen The Lost City, it's like she's a romance novelist and he's like the guy who's on the cover of the romance novels, and they both
Mm,
like actually fall into a real crime danger
that's
situation.
cool.
Um, and I feel like I'm kind of combining like there's a bit in it, spoilers for this romantic comedy. But Brad Pitt is like this like ex-military guy that they rope in to like
Mm,
rescue the person,
okay.
and he's like a minor background character. So I kind of feel
That's funny.
combining combining our like other dude character where he's like actually like somewhat capable, like
Yeah, he'd
almost like
have to
maybe
be. He'd have
more
to be.
yeah, but also kind of like not super elegant or smart about how he handles things.
Yeah, I think he's a
Could be
bro is probably
mhm,
the thing, and that's where the humor comes from is that he's untamed, and so throughout their mission that they do together, he becomes more tamed, and they kind of uncover, whatever. I
mhm,
think them being an old flame or they have a prior relationship is probably best. Requires less setup, less explanation, as opposed to like, why isn't the government going and saving these people? I think they probably live in a district or they got kidnapped in a district in Mexico that's like, we just can't go in there right now. Like the government,
mhm.
we can literally make a joke out of it where the government's like, yeah, we don't go there right now. Like, what do you mean you don't go there right now? We just don't. It's like
No, it
that's
sounds
it. That's the
sounds like
whole
that. It sounds like that guy's like Owen Wilson or Jimmy Stewart
yeah.
right
Well,
there.
yeah, well, I'm trying to think about my Owen Wilson.
Like
Yeah,
that,
wow.
it sounded close to Owen Wilson.
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
So,
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
we just
We
don't
just
go in
don't.
there right now.
We just don't go in there. No, yeah. They're gone.
It's kind of
Gone.
funny because hearing you do it, like
Move
Owen
on.
Wilson's kind of like a very tamed, mild Jimmy
They
Stewart.
are on the same like little dial or whatever.
Yeah,
Of because it's yeah, a lot of my stuff ends up being Patrick Warburton as well, which we've done before on the podcast.
yeah.
Go
I'm
listen to
just
the Lava Runners
making
if
you
you
do.
want unadulterated Patrick Warburton. But
Uh,
yes, you're making me dance. So okay, let's go with Caleb is our
Caleb.
operator guy, and he's maybe an ex boyfriend who went and served in Afghanistan and became a bigger deal, but he only went because she broke up with him. So like out of spite, he's like, I'm gonna go join the military, and he becomes more of a hot shot. And it's like there's even like he was part of the team that killed Osama. And they see the picture of him, and he's just like in the back. I fired a few shots at him.
Oh man, do you think if he's if he's too capable, is it gonna be like? I guess someone needs to be somewhat capable.
He's not socially capable. I think that's
Yeah,
the funny part is like he can kill a guy. That's easy. He can
yeah.
get in somewhere or whatever. Um, I imagine Chris Hemsworth as Thor,
Okay,
you
yeah.
know, as that kind of like bumbling Thor Ragnarok dialed in, like not
Ragnarok Thor. I
yeah,
got you.
just like dumb, vain, but capable. Like he can
But
fight,
strong and powerful.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't see why not. Um, yeah, and he just does ridiculous things. So I like the Rose and Caleb dynamic here. And maybe
I
when
like
she
it.
broke up with him, he was a dweeb. Um, he was like they were like 18 or whatever, or maybe in their 20s, and so now they're in their 30s, and they both haven't settled down or anything. Um, but
That
now
would
he's
be
like a hunk.
yeah.
He's like a big deal.
Yeah, it's like I don't know if it makes sense. Yeah, the idea that they're like Facebook friends, but from forever ago, and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh
they had a
yeah.
little
That's
short
good.
thing, and then she, I don't know if she would post it or something, and she's just like, my family's in trouble and stuff, and I'm trying to find out like a way to connect and whatever, and she just
I think
gets
she
this
would just
bing,
DM
this
him.
message. Well,
Yeah.
no, this is the
Oh yeah.
funny
Just
thing is
ding.
that
Yeah.
he messages her, and it's been so long she doesn't even. She's like, "Who is this?" Like it's just this like hunky
Yeah.
guy like on the profile.
Yeah.
She's like,
Yeah.
"Who
Yeah.
is this?" And it's like, "Hey, remember me from high school?" And she's like, "Oh my gosh!" Like he
Yeah.
was
That's funny that maybe he was a total nerd in high
yeah,
school.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
that's
He was
funny
like
because then
in.
it's like a total transformation. And they didn't even like go out, maybe,
Mhm.
or maybe they did, or he asked her to prom or whatever, and she said no, and
Okay,
so now he's
I
like, oh,
actually yeah. Maybe we don't make him super dumb. He's just like kind of like dweeby and nerd at heart and still is
yes,
like, but he's
yeah,
like super capable. And then that's like, he just kind of comes to this. He's like, oh, I know, like you made it very clear that you're like not interested and stuff like that.
yeah,
And like, just he's like writing it off. And then she's like, this is kind of like my perfect guy situation.
yeah.
I don't know. That's kind of funny.
That's funny because like he wanted her. What is it? Like back then you didn't want me. Now I'm hot. You all on me.
Yeah. I feel like that could literally be a conversation. He's like, I want
Yeah,
someone who likes me for me, not the muscles. It's like, you know how many women I have to turn away because of these?
yeah. I like that. I like that. That he effectively, he realized he joined the military. Um, Realized he's a good shot. They made him a sniper.
Mhm.
Um, I like that he has a podcast now.
I
And
like
so
that too.
like she has to go to the podcast set and like talk to him. I just feel like that's a good modern set piece kind of thing that could
Mhm.
maybe then come back at the end and they're talking about the whole adventure and the whole thing has been framed, but
Mhm.
I don't know. I just feel like it's a good outro thing that I'm kind of
Oh,
planting.
yeah.
Um, but he
It's
has
like
like a podcast that's funny because you see these manosphere type podcasts which have like Navy SEALs as the hosts and they're
mhm,
attractive and gregarious. They're like the perfect guy.
mhm.
But Caleb he's our guy. He's got his own podcast.
Okay. I thought my mind went a little different direction, but I think
Okay.
both could exist. I think this could be a really funny scene where he's like, "Hey, I wanna help you. I've actually got like people are coming over for the big game tonight. If you want to just you can come over and join like where I'm still in the
Mm,
same in town."
yeah.
And then she comes over, and the big game is like a big Dungeons and Dragons game that he's
Oh,
hosting.
okay.
Like,
Interesting. Yeah.
and I just like love the idea of like Chris Hemsworth. Like he's like a foot, like 2 feet taller than everyone else there. Everyone's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm gonna kick your butt, man!" Like they're all like dweeby guys, and like
Yeah.
he's like, "No, man," and he's like, pull up a chair." Like I love that contrast, and it also makes her like I don't know hesitate. Like it's not like perfect guy. Like he's still like
That's fair.
quirky
That's
and
fair. I
dweeby
like
and
that.
stuff.
I mean, it could
Um,
be yeah, because he'd have to answer the call on Facebook or whatever in a way that makes her think that he's capable, where she's like, oh, okay,
yeah,
he's going to help me. Um,
yeah,
but then she shows up at the game night and it's, oh, okay, I don't know. Like, I guess she sees the hunky guy, she sees the Navy SEAL, and it's like, oh, he's wearing the fatigues, he looks like the part. And then
mhm,
she shows up and it's kind of a switch for a second, just long enough for you to
mhm.
realize he's really a geek at heart. And then he's like, "Oh yeah, we've been like in the middle of a campaign and blah blah blah." Would he be that cavalier? I guess it's a comedy, so it doesn't matter. But would he be that cavalier if he knew that her parents'
Yeah.
lives were on the line?
Oh, okay, yeah, I get that. Yeah, I know that's kind of like I also recognize that that could be a problem of like him being too casual about it. Um, and yeah, maybe we don't have that scene. Uh, Maybe they meet for coffee or something to discuss this, and then he's like, "Oh, and maybe there's like because clearly like they don't know where to go right away. Like they're still like trying to figure things out and stuff like that. Because I don't know if
Yeah, I think
he still has
she
a
would show him the footage, and he would be
yeah.
aware of and he's worked the border too. I think he was CIA operative or whatever after being in Afghanistan and stuff. And so that's why
Mhm.
he can be smart as well as be familiar with that territory and be like, hey, for the right price,
Mhm.
I will go back there and I will retrieve your parents. And she's like, well, you're taking me with you. Classic line. Um,
Mhm.
I almost feel like turning that on its head and be like, do you want to go with me?
Like
Like
him
he
offering?
he offers it. Yeah. It reduces a
Yeah.
little bit of the conflict, but um, I don't know. I don't know. I see why people throw that kind of line in there where it's like, and you're taking me with you. And then they kind of hold some sort of leverage over them. Um,
Yeah. Although it is like it feels kind of yeah, it is one of those things that if you were watching a pitch meeting, it's like why does she have to go with him? So the plot can continue, so the rest of the story can happen.
yeah.
Um, but
That's
I
where,
think we could
yeah.
have something like that. Like I think if him
If we made her
inviting her
competent in her own right, it's in some other way, like she's a doctor or a nurse or something, she
or
could
a
say, like,
police
hey,
officer or something.
yeah, I think we don't want to step on his skills too much. Like, okay, I
Yeah.
know my way around a gun. But
Yeah.
again, giving her like a nurse thing, I think helps because it's like, hey, you get shot, you're gonna want me to be there. If they're hurt, I'm gonna want to help them.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe
Yeah.
she's done like Peace Corps type stuff in
Mhm.
battleground areas. And so she's not a total unequipped person, but she's equipped in a very small sliver of what that could
Yeah.
entail.
Yeah.
So yeah, and maybe he brings like another operator with him. Um, some other guy. That's why I think a podcast and him and his host, like his co-host, and he's like, "Hey, buddy, we got a mission." And I don't know. It's like then you could dial that guy way up, um, and they go on the hunt.
It'd be funny if like the guys in the cartel, like one of the guys listened to the podcast and they're
Yes,
like they're like a huge fan of this podcast and like,
yes,
oh man, they're gonna bust these guys.
yeah,
And they're like, hey, it sounds like that dude we've got locked up in the back that they're talking about.
yeah, exactly. No, that's true. I mean, I don't know if they would stop and record an episode, to like let them know what they're about to do, but that they would maybe talk about a maneuver that they've done in the past, and they're like, "Oh yeah, Holmes, like they're gonna do that maneuver on us, man," and then he like figures it out. I think that would be funny.
Yeah,
And he
just
gets
like somehow
captured or
crossing
whatever.
that because I feel like there's a little bit of bouncing back and forth. Like we'll have scenes with Jimmy Stewart dad, like Rachel and James with the
Yeah.
cartel, because I feel like we're in this elevated reality, like Coen Brothers, Oh Brother Where Art Thou, where I think
Yes.
there could be this like like silly exchange, like where it is like, oh, there are stakes here, but at the same time they kind of feel suspended a little bit, like
Yeah,
random
that's
stuff could
true.
happen.
That's true.
Um,
For the sake of a joke, I think is the
um,
comedy thing. Like we're willing to suspend some of the dramatic reasons to have like a good joke. Um, that not in like a Marvel
There
sense where
okay,
you like undercut any sincerity.
I've got a joke, but it might like break things.
Oh,
So
okay. All
we
right.
can ditch it.
Break it, and
If
we can bend it. We can mend
um
it back.
it would be funny in my head if they're like hostages and then I don't know if there was like I'm not super familiar with the cartel stuff, but like if there was like a rival gang or
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
something
Yeah.
attacking them. And then like in the heat of the moment, like Jimmy Stewart like shoots and like saves one of them and like
Oh,
whoever's
yeah.
breaking
Yeah.
in, and they're like, oh man, and like they kind of like slowly like make him like
Yeah.
like
Oh, make
the
him
dad, the
the
opera.
kingpin. Yeah.
Or
Well,
maybe
I've
not the
never met a
kingpin, but
kingpin before. I'm trying to think about what he would
but him
say.
just
Oh man, he's like, I wasn't even the head of my fantasy league. Like trying to find like some really low level thing that he could say that would be funny for him. Like, whoa, well, this, Anyway,
and then
um,
Rachel's like, she's like, James, what are you doing? They're bad guys. He's like, but they seem really nice. They like
yeah,
seem
yeah,
like they need someone to lead them.
yeah. They just need a leader, Rachel.
Rachel, they need a leader. I'm not the leader that they deserve, but the one that they wanted.
Yeah, yeah. We'll get back to our Batman. Yeah, yeah. I think that's funny. Like, I think the subplot is definitely like whatever Rachel and James are up to, and that would
Yeah.
give them the most like play. I think them getting ingratiated with the cartel leader would be funny. Like he has lots of toys,
Hmm.
like big machines or arcade games or something like that, and you could have them, you know, um, compete in there, and he becomes more friends with him. He eventually
Yeah.
gets like just negotiated into like he negotiates his own release somehow, or maybe the
Mhm.
release of his wife or something.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think there our themes here are about family, about love and romantic relationships. So we could maybe push something like that, where he
Mhm.
sees the cartel leader sees how much Jimmy Stewart loves his wife.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I like the idea that the cartel leader um, dies,
Mm.
but he gets to see like Rachel, or sorry, Rachel, Rose and her dad like reunited or whatever, and he's like, "Oh man, that was like beautiful, man," and then he just dies. Or he could say, we can make him more of a tragic character where he's like, my mom, I haven't had like my parents, I haven't been able to connect with them at all. Like they've been dead for a long time, and
Mhm.
I just wish I could reconnect with them or whatever. And so then at the end, when he sees that happen, it's like kind of a closure on his thing that he was a tragic figure anyway. He was going to die. He kind of went down with the ship a little bit, but we see that little moment of that his dad, James, was able to kind of witness, so to speak, to him, and he sees the light a little bit there at the end, and maybe
I
even
like
jumps
that.
in front of his men's shooting them or something.
Yeah. I
Um,
think I think that's actually kind of cool, and this brings me a little bit back to an old story we did, Everybody Loves Pizza with the gang wars,
mm-hmm.
because it's
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of like this unassuming person kind of comes among their ranks and kind of shows them a better way and, like, helps them to relate to each other, and I feel
yes,
like there's definitely room for that because I think Jimmy Stewart and Rachel, because it could be really funny if they're just, like, I don't know, Rachel's more resistant to this at first. She's like, "James, we shouldn't what like they're bad guys or whatever," and he's like kind of slowly getting involved. And then Rachel slowly gets involved too. Like she's like,
yes,
"Oh man, Miss Mrs. Stewart, these cookies are amazing." Like
yeah, yeah,
she's just
yeah.
like make
And that would
and
be
like
funny. I think it's either two things. It's either video games, and he coaches one of the guys how to actually beat some other player, like the kingpin beat these other underlings or whatever.
mhm,
Um, I think FIFA could be something funny where it's like soccer, and he's like, I used to coach my daughter in soccer. I know a thing or two, or maybe he was a good college player or something, and so he's
mhm,
able to coach him. I think the video game thing is funny because it's something that they could be passively doing, kind of the
yeah,
two guys that are watching him,
mhm,
or poker. That's a little bit more realistic, where they're sitting
mhm,
around just playing, and it's a group of them, and he's like, well, you should. I could tell he was bluffing, and
yeah,
he gets on to
yeah.
him or
I
whatever.
used I used to host a poker night,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Um,
Um. Yeah.
but I
I
don't know
think
enough about
there's a
poker to kind of speak to like ins and outs that he could do, but
yeah,
that's an interesting a little bit more of a man to man thing,
yeah.
whereas like the video game thing is a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, I almost feel like the big bad is like, and I don't know, I don't want to stretch their stakes too thin, but like if there's the rival gang, because it almost feels like this gang kind of becomes a little bit family to them in some ways,
A little bit,
and
yeah.
I'm getting a little bit of vibes of Barry, where it's like
Yes, a little bit, yeah.
Hank, where it's like everyone's kind of like a fun family, and then but then maybe there's like a real because I'm just trying to think if they come to save them and they're like, "We're friends with all these guys," then, like, I feel like there needs to be some outside force that
I
is
think it would just be
actually
the typical kind of misunderstanding thing at that point that would cut things off. So
mm,
like the elderly couple that's been taken hostage, they've befriended them. But they haven't been released by them.
mhm,
So there's that kind of like, well, we haven't really broached that, but they've become more comfortable with them.
yeah,
Caleb and Rose show up along with like another team of guys. They start shooting people.
mhm,
Um, it starts popping off or whatever. I think that just allows you to have a moment between the cartel kingpin and James
mhm,
that is impactful, more impactful than just like I'm holding you hostage.
yeah,
And that way they can die under some like level of misunderstanding. I think that makes them a little bit more um, sympathetic. That the kingpin would be like, he's stuck playing his part. He's stuck playing his role as the kingpin at this point. He's like, man, I wish I could like do something else. Uh, you know, and Jimmy Stewart's just like, but you can, and he's talking to him, and I don't know, like
yeah. I think
the
it's
power of
interesting.
the common man.
I really like the dynamic of James's story, James and Rachel with them, because I feel like there's just a lot of fun and games to be had there, and just
Yes.
this bonding, and it's kind of uh I don't know, it's just like funny. I think we can flesh out Caleb and Rose a little bit
Yes.
to define them. Who do you think likes who? Or is it kind of like a mutual like because if she was like stood him up and was not interested in him in high school and maybe even like teased him or made fun of him or something, um, would it be like would he still have a feelings for her or would it be like turned like he doesn't really have feelings for her and she's kind of having some for him?
Mm,
Because the other
I
thought I
think it's
have,
probably both, that
yeah.
as soon as she rediscovers him and sees him in action, she starts to really fall for him.
Mhm.
But I think he's always loved her, you know.
Okay.
I think what's interesting about it is that this is essentially Caleb's dream scenario where he's like, I
Mhm.
wish that she could need me in some way.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know if there's something that you could frame it that way. This might be too meta, but like you open up on them in high school, you see the whole rejection interaction,
Mhm.
and then you flash forward. That feels like a lot of story to cover to then get the
Mhm.
parents kidnapped and do all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But then you come back at the end and you realize it's all just been a role playing thing that Caleb has
Oh,
been playing.
yeah, it feels a little meta to do
Yeah,
that.
but it just you brought the role playing thing up, the D
Yeah.
and D thing, and it's like I'm just gonna role play my life. I'm gonna be this big hunky hero, and I'm always gonna get it right. You kind of make a joke out of that perfection uh,
Mhm.
by by saying that's what he's projecting as being what he thinks she would like.
Yeah, I think that's kind of his arc a little bit, is that after high school,
Yeah.
he went set on this path to be what he was assumed to be useful, and he wanted to be needed, and he wanted to be,
Hmm.
helpful, and it kinda sent him down that maybe he's not even I think we kind of show him he's like he's good at this stuff. He got really good at it. He's not very passionate about it, but he's very passionate about playing his D&D games with his friends. And
Yes.
so he's putting on this face of what he thinks he's supposed to be because of what she and like maybe even like, hey,
Mm.
this was you set me on this journey. Like you kind of said these things and I felt like I needed to be this. And then I think his big reveal at the end, what he needs to overcome is that he needs to realize, and she maybe needs to communicate, like, oh, I like you for who you are, not because of just the hunk or the
Yeah.
skills, you know?
Yeah. I think we're really close to tying the two plots together, the plot and the
Hmm.
subplot. The main plot is the romantic one where she's like, hey, I'm sorry I rejected you
Hmm.
for who you are. Um, like I see that now I made a mistake. And maybe that's an interesting thing where she's like, I made a mistake. Like I realized that you had all this potential. There's also something to be said about, okay, because she did that to him, that's what set him on the path to set him up for this success.
Hmm.
But I think there's a similar plot in the subplot with James and the cartel kingpin, where
Hmm.
he sees like, hey, you're playing this role, but you're not really this person.
Hmm.
I think that's interesting that we kind of
Yeah.
wear these identities that are
Hmm.
useful to us, so that we can be accepted by people. Oh, I'm the guy that runs marathons or whatever, and now I'm with the marathon people. I have a home, and then you kind of learn to love that thing. That's not perfect, obviously, but like the kingpin guys, like it's just a lifestyle that I fell into, that I thought I needed to, because to get accepted by people, I needed to be tough.
Hmm.
That's the kingpin, but that's also what Caleb would have said to Rose, is like,
Hmm.
to get accepted, I thought I needed to be tough.
Hmm.
Um, and the trick to that is, yes, you do need to be tough. And
Hmm.
so I think he is now actually tough. Um, or you could maybe mess with that where it's like she breaks him in some way through fighting or whatever, and just like revealing that he likes her, or something to that effect. And then now he's not tough anymore.
Hmm.
Like when they need him the most, he's like totally like, man, am I even this guy? Um, it's like there's
Caleb, but
literally like a
really.
loaded gun on the ground and he needs to kill like a cartel person. And he's like, I don't know if I'm this guy anymore. you know?
That's really it's like the guy, this like cartel guy's like crawling towards his gun and she's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
hey, hey, I really need you to be this guy just for like
Yeah, she
five
like
more
picks up the
seconds.
gun for a second. It's like, I need you to be this guy for like, yeah, yeah, that's good. Um, Yeah, there's something to that. Like we can maybe finesse that a little bit, make it a little bit more specific about what he would need to do that.
Hmm.
But it would be funny to have a mirror scene with James and the cartel kingpin with like the other kingpin,
Hmm.
and he's like, "I really need you to be that guy right now. Like, I don't need you to be, you know, the, you do need to be tough. Like,
Hmm.
because I don't like the films. Not that I don't like them. I think there's a purpose to it in some ways of like men finding their softer side kind of thing.
Hmm.
I think that just gets overplayed. And
Hmm.
so by really showing that there is a need for tough men, a good need for tough men to go fight the bad guy.
Hmm.
Um, and obviously
And to
James is just
protect.
like, and to protect, yeah. And James is getting like that same outcome by trying to talk to the cartel kingpin, but it's like
Hmm.
halfway through the therapy. Basically, they both Caleb and the kingpin like depart from the therapy and they kind of get lost in the sauce.
Yeah.
Um,
Who am I? Am I this guy?
what am I? Oh my
I
god,
I
yeah.
like I like I like that by the time we cross the beams, like they're there and they're all like running and they're all it's the parents, Rose, Caleb, and the Kingpin. And then he's just like, and the Kingman is just like, yeah, I just don't know if I'm this guy anymore. And he's like,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying, man. I don't know if I'm this
Yeah,
guy. And
yeah,
like
yeah,
they're like
yeah.
having this like bro moment. And they're like, the two toughest guys here don't know if they can beat up right now. And like
That's funny. Yeah. I think that at that point then the kingpin would be like, "You know what? I really am this guy." And
just him like I just imagine he's like I am this guy and just like
yeah.
shoots this guy.
Yes, yes, that's my point. Is like he just straight up shoots Caleb. Caleb's wearing body armor, he survives, but I think that's funny where it's like he's like, "Yeah, you know what? No," like he realizes um and I don't know, you'd have to play that transformation a little bit, but it's like he kind of snaps out of the spell
Mhm,
of of James Stewart, you know,
mhm.
Jimmy Stewart's character. He gets out of it, him having him in his ear. He's like, "Hey man, you were like talking to me about like poker and stuff, man. Then he made me like feel like feelings." Uh, and so then it becomes this bigger thing. And then at the end, he's like, but I like the power. That's I think the difference, the foil, the dark character of Caleb.
Mhm.
Caleb is that he became powerful, but he has the meekness to not choose the power when he needs to. So he can have mercy, basically.
Yeah,
Um,
he basically picks up the power when it's needed and then puts it
yes,
back down. And
yes.
I like that. You're always one to find the two
Got to
versions.
find them. They're in there.
Um so then I think it kind of ends with Caleb like rising to the occasion to
Yes.
protect um and then they become kind of an item. And I feel like he's maybe still confused. He stops the kingpin, but he's just like, I just don't even know. Like, I became this for you, and
Yeah.
but then over the journey, like she kind of falls for the guy he is behind all the muscles
Yeah.
and
She
the
she gets the
guns.
full picture of him, and
Yeah,
she actually falls for the guy that she rejected in high school. I think there's
yeah,
an interesting line there where it's like, I I don't like you for the you are now. I finally see you for the you were then.
hmm yeah.
Um,
I like that.
you
This
know,
something of just like, oh, I wasted a lot of time. Um, if if I yeah, I like that a lot.
yeah,
Writing
hold
it
on.
down.
I'm
Writing it
writing it
down.
down.
And then yeah, I feel like we've got the shell of this story. Basically, they get kidnapped. She's like, I need someone to help. She kind
Yeah.
of reconnects with old kind of flame, but someone she's rejected who's gotten
Yep.
super hunky and super skilled, but is still kind of dorky and is trying to
Yes.
just put on a brave face. And then they have like some adventures along the way. James Stewart is befriending the cartel and
Yes.
the kingpin.
Yes. Wow. You
Uh,
ever played Texas Hold'em? It teaches them how to play a new game.
mhm.
Um, that's cool. And yeah, then I like the idea of the fun in games because you say that phrase a lot, but you mean like just fun scenes back and forth,
Yeah, yeah,
kind of adventurous scenes.
yeah. I don't. I do say that a lot, and for people who are less familiar, what I mean by that is like in the second act, in like the middle of the movie, like there's a section that you can call fun and games because that's a lot of the. I think in the three act structure, it's like the first act is like everything's kind of being introduced, and
Exposition,
then
yeah, you're
yeah,
setting it all up.
exposition. Who are these people? What are the stakes? And then we kind of hit the second act. And the second act, like the first half of it, is a lot of fun and games, which just means like, oh, people exploring the world and like figuring out
Yes.
if it's this treasure planet. It's just him being on a pirate ship, and it's like everything's kind of cool and exciting.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the midpoint, that fun and games becomes more higher stakes, and then the third act is the climax. So
Yes, I
when I
think the
say fun and
midpoint
games, it's just
is
like fun things happening. Him playing poker with the cartel, them like flirting, but then he's like, "Oh, that's my Comic-Con outfit in the closet. Sorry, didn't mean
yeah.
to for you to see
And,
that."
like, they're having to go, like, hide and go undercover through Juarez and then find a cell and then sneak
Mhm,
under the car and all that kinda stuff. I think that, is this fun and games. They're learning, more about each other while they're overcoming obstacles.
mhm,
I think that's certainly what Caleb and Rose are up to, and then, of course, Rachel and James and the Kingpin are, getting to know each other and yeah, uncovering more about each other. Same kind of thing, just like through cartel life, whatever that looks like. Um,
mhm.
like, oh man, can you help me feed my gators, dude? And he's like feeding alligators or whatever. What are we
Well,
feeding these things? And he's like, oh,
I've
those are
never
hostages.
fed gators before.
Yeah, they end up feeding them other hostages.
I think it'd be
Um,
actually really funny if if maybe Caleb doesn't like maybe it's Rachel. The mom picks up the gun and kills the kingpin at the end.
oh yeah, oh yeah. I think that would be funny. I also think that the culmination, the difference between the foil of the Kingpin and Caleb is the Kingpin has no mercy. Like he
Mhm.
flirts with the idea of having mercy and being merciful, and he's like, "Oh, I kind of like this," And Jimmy Swart's like, "Oh, see, well, mercy's great," whatever he would say to convince him. And then Caleb is like starting to, he's spending more time with his crush, and he doesn't. He's starting to second guess himself,
Mhm.
and then at the end, he becomes his full true form and can have the mercy. So he defeats the Kingpin, who has chosen to redon his dark mantle, and but then he has mercy on him at the end,
Mhm.
and he brings him back. Because maybe he's on like the CIA's most wanted, so he's like, this will be worth a chunk of change. And then it
Mhm.
all kind of bookends with um, Caleb and Rose. Caleb, you see him on his podcast, and he's just like, yeah, this is how I caught a kingpin, and blah 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 blah. And then you like zoom out a little bit, and you see that Rose is sitting next to him, and they have like wedding rings on now, and that's why they met. I don't know. I think that's interesting. Like they're on maybe on some other podcast. They're maybe not on
Yeah.
his own. Maybe he doesn't
I
have
like
one.
it if they're on his and she's on it, and then we zoom out a little further, and the one guy who we introduced earlier that loved their podcast is also like a guest on it. He's like, "Yeah,
Oh
man,
yeah,
that day
that would
was
be funny.
crazy, man. That
Yeah,
was
that would be funny.
crazy."
Yeah,
And
and then
then
you
like
like shot me, dude. And then he's got like an eye patch or whatever. Like we totally see him get killed at some point, and he comes back and he's perfectly fine. And then he gets like handcuffed and taken away. They brought him out of jail just to be
yeah,
interviewed.
yeah. Well, thanks.
Um,
Back to jail.
yeah, man, I can't wait to be back on. I can't, and he's just yeah. I think
Yeah,
that's really
he's just
funny.
like
So
fanboying over them.
yeah, he's
But
like,
I
oh
think
man,
that's
when's my
really
episode
funny.
gonna air? Um,
the the guys in cell block B are gonna love this, man.
yeah, exactly. I think that's really solid footwork foundation stuff for this story. There could be so much more
Hmm.
fun in games. You guys, again, have probably seen a lot of things like that here and there, like these different moments, romantic comedy going through. Again, you said the Sandra Bullock, Channing Tatum movie,
Hmm.
that kind of stuff. High
Hmm.
adventure, while the romantic stakes are getting higher and higher. And um, the midpoint, I was going to double back on this. The midpoint is when our main character's perspective shifts on the problem. And so I think not necessarily the problem about her parents being kidnapped, but I think her perspective on Caleb changes. Um,
Mm.
that she maybe goes from not liking him to liking him. And then in that kind of confusion that happens, um, she accidentally says something that actually rejects him. He's then destabilized, unsure of himself. He's like, I went
Hmm.
through years of therapy and lots of, tours in Iraq about like to take care of this problem. And here it is, in my lap. Or maybe
Hmm.
it makes more sense for her to have heard him. So maybe the
Hmm.
midpoint is that she thinks he says something kind of classic, whatever, overhears him talking to his buddy. And then they have a big fight about it. And then he becomes he deconstructs his tough persona to then pick it back up when it matters most.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think
what are
I
we?
think I
Go
think
ahead.
that makes I was just gonna say I think that makes sense. I feel like there could be a cool moment where like he references his softer side and talks about like a show or a movie he liked, and she's like, "Oh, I actually really liked that movie." And I feel like there might be this start where like there's kind of hinted, "Oh, I did all this for you." And at first she's thinking, "Oh, wow, like
Yeah,
I guess this helped him." And then she kind of starts to realize it's like, "Oh, no, I don't know if this actually helped him. I feel like
yeah,
this like in some ways like it built success for him, but he's not really happy." And like,
yeah,
and like finding the
totally.
balance, like finding the balance of like picking up the power when you need it, but not
Yes,
like making that your identity.
yes, exactly. And that he's tough for the right reasons. And the missing
Mhm.
piece for him is the romantic relationship. And so he was tough to try and get that. He then gets kind of picked apart by that, is then able to reconstitute once he realizes that she actually does love him. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, and then they seal the deal. They're married, and instead of it, because it opened up on James and Rachel's anniversary, like they're kind of having
Mhm.
an extravagant 30th or 35th anniversary, whatever it is. And now it's instead maybe um, we zoom out and it's a Zoom call from their wedding or their honeymoon.
Mhm.
I think that would be a
Mhm.
better bookend than the podcast. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
The
Although the
podcast the
podcast thing is
podcast could
funny.
be the podcast could be like, don't you miss the days when the credits would roll and there'd be a little box of like bloopers or bonus
Oh
funny
yeah, that's a
scenes?
good idea. That's a
Like
good idea. So post
that's like
credits are
literally
like during the
them doing
credits.
the podcast. They're like, "Oh
Yeah,
yeah, so
yeah,
this happened." And the guy's like, "All right, thanks for having me." And then like some
yeah.
cops grab him and take him back to jail.
I love that.
Um I like it,
Yeah, I
man.
think that's a
I
great
think it's a fun story.
same. And I think we have our line. So we're on to our titling it and our along the lines segment here. Our along the lines one
I
I wrote down was, oh, go ahead.
or
Were you gonna
oh,
say something?
are you wanting to do the line or the title first?
Oh, I guess we should do the title first because you're right. We usually do the line as the send off. But I guess because we had it written, I just assumed that we were doing it first. But go ahead.
Yeah. Titles, I've got some ideas and they're kind of simple, but I just like something like Tough Enough or Tough Stuff because I just could
Mm,
picture like a movie poster with like Chris Hemsworth and the
yeah.
Kingpin like being like real tough guys on it because that's kind
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
uh, theme we're kind of dancing around of like identity being tough. Um,
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
or just tougher. Tougher is interesting because it's just one
Tougher.
word.
Yeah. Tough exterior. Um, something. I mean, tough stuff is fine. I think if you're trying to go for that romantic comedy Sandra Bullock fare, I think that's
Hmm.
probably like
It
right on the
feels like a
money.
rom-com title.
Totally. Something that would stream on Netflix is like, oh, here's Tough Stuff starring Chris Hemsworth and who would play Rose? Um, I don't know. They'd have to be roughly
Margot
the same
Robbie.
age. Margot Robbie. Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Like, there you go.
Tough stuff.
Um, yeah, I like that. And yeah, then our line are along the lines that we wrote down. So a little bit less of a pure StoryFellas episode here where we just kind of make it up on the spot at the end. But I think it was good
You had a
enough that
really
this is
good one
when
though. I feel like we got to use that one.
that's true. That's true. And this is when Rose is um they're finally coming back together. So this is before he takes down the kingpin, but she finds him in the chaos and says, I don't like you for the you are now. I finally see you for the you were then. Which I love the double U's. Those are really hard to say. But I think it works. I think it works because she's saying, like, hey, I I fell for all of you. That might even be an easier line
Mhm.
to say. Um, like, I didn't fall for just this tough version of you. I fell for all of you.
I like that. That's another good one, man.
Yeah.
Spitting out those good lines.
Yeah, man.
Uh, the other one I really liked that you said earlier is like, well, Mercy's awesome.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Jimmy Stewart's very complex treatise on why the kingpin should be merciful. Well, have you ever tried being merciful?
It's
And he's just like,
really like cool, man.
yeah. Well, mercy's great. Mercy's great. It's better to give than to receive. It's like, what is that? Okay.
What are you
Um,
saying,
what are
Jimmy?
you saying here?
Oh,
But no, that comes back into play because he teaches him about mercy, and then Caleb has mercy on him, and I think that completes the arc of the Kingpin. Even though he's like going to prison, he's like, oh man, that actually, I'm a changed man about that. I don't know.
Nice. I like it. I like all the lines, man. They were good. They're funny. Your Jimmy Stewart's impeccable.
I don't know about
And
impeccable.
I think
Whoa, I'm a little peckish.
It's impeccable.
Yeah.
Well, let's say goodbye to the folks. Can we send them off with a little Jimmy Stewart goodbye?
Well, folks, and until next time, I'll see you later. Well, bye now.
Thank you all for listening to StoryFellas, a part of the Pemmican Studios podcast network. Check out our show notes for bonus material, links, and more. To find out more about our current projects, send us messages, and suggest ideas for the show, go to storyfellaspodcast.com. If you liked what you heard, share the show with a friend. Word of mouth is the best way to grow this community. Until next time, go make and break those stories.